The safe in my fiancé's study didn't hold jewels. It held my FBI file photo. Leon Volt opened the heavy steel door with the same unhurried grace he used for uncapping wine. The frame inside was silver, ornate, the kind of thing you'd put on a mantelpiece. The photo was my academy headshot, hair pulled back, no smile, eyes that hadn't learned to lie yet. When did you know? My voice came out steady. That surprised me. He didn't answer right away. He lifted the frame out and held it beside my face, comparing, like he was verifying a painting's authenticity. He set the frame down on his desk. The leather surface gleamed under warm lamplight. Everything in this room cost more than my annual salary. Everything except me.
You walked into the charity gala like you were assessing inventory. Not a woman looking for love. A professional evaluating a target.
I said nothing.
He slides into the seat naturally, his eyes fixed firmly on the female lead, with a mischievous smirk tugging at his lips. He sits behind the desk. His gaze is sharp and piercing, the corner of his mouth still tilted up. Then he stands up and strides straight over to stand right in front of the female lead.
I had you investigated.
He smiled.
Nothing came back. A woman with no past. That's not poor breeding, Vera. That's federal erasure.
He took a step closer. I could smell the scotch on his breath, and something else, sandalwood. The scent I'd catalogued in my first surveillance report. Subject wears Creed Original Santal, consistent, predictable. Nothing about him was predictable. His fingers brushed the back of my neck, right over the scar, the one from the cochlear implant surgery.
That wasn't actually cochlear implant surgery. The one that housed a microtransmitter currently broadcasting to an FBI surveillance van 3 blocks away.
I stopped breathing. He didn't press. He kissed it.
Are they listening right now?
I didn't answer.
Let them.
He pulled back. His eyes, that impossible pale blue, held mine without blinking.
Now you have a choice, Vera.
My real name. First time he'd spoken it.
He reached into his pocket and withdrew a ring box. Opened it. Inside was an emerald the color of his eyes, set in platinum.
The ring caught the light.
Arrest me. Finish your mission.
His voice was soft, almost tender.
Or put this on. Stay with me, on my terms.
Somewhere, 3 blocks away, Marcus was listening, waiting for me to make the correct choice. I looked at Leon Volt. He waited, like he'd been waiting his whole life.
Choose.
3 months earlier, Marcus Webb stood across from me, in a training room that smelled like bleach and old coffee. A 2-way mirror covered one wall. I never knew who was behind it. I learned not to ask.
Say it again.
I love you.
Flat. Dead. Say it like you mean it.
I looked at him, not at the wall, at him. I love you. He circled me. His shoes made no sound on the industrial carpet. Marcus never made unnecessary noise. He was efficient in everything, including cruelty.
Your body is a mission asset. Your tears, your smile, every second you spend in his bed. Assets, not feelings. Assets.
I kept my face still.
If you can't separate your emotions from the objective, you're useless to me, and useless to the Bureau.
He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the broken capillaries around his nose. Stress or whiskey. Maybe both.
Now say it like you're convincing a man who trusts no one.
I thought about what that would require. The micro-expressions, the catch in my throat, the precise moment of eye contact followed by looking away. I never knew who was behind it. I learned not to ask.
Say it again.
I love you.
Flat. Dead. Say it like you mean it.
I love you, I said. Marcus studied me.
Better.
He walked toward the door.
You ship out next week. Don't make me regret signing off on you.
The door clicked shut. I stood in the empty room for a long time, My reflection in the two-way mirror stared back. I didn't recognize her yet. That would come later, now. The ring box sat open in Leon's palm. The emerald burned green in the lamplight. I thought about the training room, the bleach smell, the way Marcus said assets, like he was reading a quarterly report. I thought about Leon's lips on my scar. I reached out. My fingers brushed the edge of the ring box. The platinum was cold. Leon didn't move, didn't breathe. His eyes tracked my hand like it was the only thing in the world worth watching. I lifted the ring. The emerald was heavy, heavier than it looked. I turned it once in my fingers, watching the facets catch light. Then I slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Leon exhaled, a sound so quiet I almost missed it. Then he took my hand and lifted it to his lips. His mouth brushed my knuckles just above the ring.
There. Was that so hard?
He kissed me. His mouth was warm, scotch and something darker underneath. I closed my eyes. I didn't know if I was kissing him for the mission or for myself. When he pulled back, his thumb traced my jaw.
I knew you'd choose correctly.
From the corner of my eye, I caught my reflection in the dark window glass. A woman in an engagement dress, an emerald on her hand. A scar, know who she was anymore. Somewhere, Marcus' voice would be cracking through the surveillance feed. I could hear him in my head, flat and satisfied. Target has entered deep emotional manipulation phase. Leon turned me towards the door. His hand settled on the small of my back. Proprietary. Warm.
Come. Our guests are waiting.
The engagement party sprawled through Leon's penthouse like a living thing. Crystal glasses, string quartet, women in gowns that cost more than my cover identity's entire fabricated net worth. Men who moved money across borders the way normal people moved groceries. Leon kept his hand on my back. Every introduction followed the same rhythm.
My fiancée, Vera.
A firm nod. A practiced smile from me. Their eyes flickering to the emerald on my finger, calculating, reassessing. A woman in emerald silk said her name was Helena. She ran a hedge fund. Her gaze lingered on my dress. Dior? Oscar de la Rente. Leon's fingers pressed once against my spine. Approval. The transmitter sat silent against my neck. No feedback. No static. Just the weight of it. A second heartbeat under my skin. I excused myself to the restroom. The powder room was marble and gold. I locked the door and stood in front of the mirror. The woman looking back wore an engagement ring worth more than her entire existence before this mission. Her hair was pinned up. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like someone who belonged in Leon Volt's world. She looked like a stranger. I turned on the faucet. Cold water ran over my fingers. The emerald glittered under the venery lights. Your body is a mission asset. Marcus's voice. Always there. A splinter I couldn't remove. I thought about removing the ring. Just for a minute. Just to breathe without it. I didn't. A knock at the door.
Vera?
Helena's voice. The hedge fund woman.
Leon's looking for you. He said something about a toast.
I dried my hands, smoothed my dress, opened the door. Helena smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Men get nervous when their prizes wander off. I'm sure Leon Volt doesn't get nervous about anything. No, he doesn't. That's what makes him interesting. I walked back into the party. Leon stood near the windows, Manhattan glittering behind him like a stolen crown. When he saw me, his expression didn't change, but his hand extended. I took it. His thumb brushed my knuckles, over the ring.
You were gone a long time.
3 minutes.
3 minutes is a long time.
He lifted my hand and kissed my fingers. His eyes never left mine.
I don't like not knowing where you are. Even for 3 minutes.
The transmitter burned against my spine. Then don't let go. Something flickered in his face. Something I hadn't cataloged in any file. It looked almost like surprise. Then it was gone.
I don't intend to.
He turned to the room and raised his glass. The string quartet fell silent. 100 faces turned towards us.
To my fiancé, who walked into my life and made it infinitely more interesting.
Laughter rippled through the room.
To Vera.
I lifted my own glass. The champagne was cold. The bubbles stung my throat. Leon watched me over the rim of his glass. Somewhere Marcus was listening, recording, filing. Target has entered deep emotional manipulation phase. The ring was heavy on my finger. The scar was silent on my neck. I smiled for the room. I didn't know whose smile it was anymore. What was unusual was the velvet box beside the coffee cup. He set the tray across my lap and sat on the edge of the mattress. His suit was already pressed. His tie was already perfect. Leon Volt did not have mornings. He had extensions of his workday that happened to occur before noon.
Open it.
I lifted the box. Navy velvet. Heavy. Inside was a necklace. White gold chain. A pendant shaped like a teardrop, set with a single sapphire. It's beautiful.
I want you to wear it.
I touched the thin chain around my own neck. The one with the transmitter disguised as a silver locket. The one Marcus' team was listening through right now. I like the one I have.
I don't.
His voice was light, pleasant.
It's ugly.
The word hung between us. Ugly. He'd never criticized anything I wore before. He'd bought my entire wardrobe. Every piece was his taste, his selection, his approval. He knew the necklace wasn't his. I've worn it for years, I said. Sentimental value. Leon reached over and lifted the locket between his fingers. His thumb traced the edge, right over the seam where the transmitter casing met the decorative engraving.
Sentiment is a liability. I thought the FBI taught you that.
My blood stopped. He let the locket drop back against my collarbone. It felt heavier than it had a moment ago.
I'm not asking you to throw it away.
The sapphire caught the morning light.
I'm asking you to wear mine instead. For today, as a favor to your fiancé.
A favor. He was giving me an exit that didn't require confession. I reached behind my neck and unclasped the locket. The chain slipped free. The transmitter went dead. Somewhere across the city, Marcus's feed would have just cut to static. Leon smiled. He fastened the sapphire around my throat himself. His fingers brushed my scar again, deliberately, I was sure, and then he leaned down and kissed the hollow beneath my ear.
There. Now you're only mine.
I picked up my coffee. My hand didn't shake, but my neck felt naked in a way it hadn't in months. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Marcus's number. I let it go to voicemail. Leon stood.
I have meetings until 4. Dinner at 7. Wear the blue dress.
He walked out without looking back. The door clicked shut. I sat in the silence of a room that wasn't mine, wearing a necklace that wasn't a transmitter, engaged to a man who knew exactly what I was. My phone buzzed again, and again. I turned it off. For the first time in 3 months, no one was listening. I didn't know if I felt free or buried. The Volt family luncheon was held at Leon's childhood home, a limestone mansion in Greenwich, where the hedges were trimmed with surgical precision, and the staff wore uniforms that hadn't changed since 1962. Leon's hand rested on my lower back as we walked through the front doors, proprietarial, calm. The sapphire sat cool against my throat. His mother, Celeste Volt, received us in the conservatory. She was 60 and preserved like a specimen in amber.
Vera.
Her smile was a perfect her cheek, not her hand.
How lovely to finally meet the woman who's tamed my son.
I don't think anyone tames Leon, I said. No. Her eyes flickered.
They don't.
The dining room table seated 16. Leon's half-sister Anya sat directly across from me. She was 26, blonde, and wearing a dress that cost more than my cover identity's fabricated education. Her smile was sweet. Her eyes were not. I've been so curious about you. Leon never brings anyone home. And then suddenly, engaged to a woman no one's ever heard of. My family keeps a low profile.
I asked around. The Castelloni name doesn't ring any bells in Europe.
Leon cut into his fish. He didn't look up.
Not in the circles we move in, anyway.
My grandmother preferred Provence to Paris. She said society was exhausting. Provence. Anna's eyebrows lifted. At the last dinner, I could have sworn you said she summered in Tuscany.
The table went quiet. Celeste Fork paused halfway to her mouth.
I'd said Tuscany at the gala last month. A slip. A stupid amateur slip. She had homes in both. The Tuscan villa was sold after she passed. The Perrance property stayed in the family. How fortunate to have so many beautiful places to remember incorrectly. Leon's hand found my knee under the table. His thumb traced a slow circle.
My fiancée has more important things to occupy her mind than her late grandmother's real estate portfolio.
Ana's smile flickered. Of course, to Vera, who I'm sure is exactly who she says she is. The toast hung in the air, unanswered. I lifted my own glass. To family, and to knowing exactly where we belong. Anna's eyes narrowed. Leon's hand squeezed my knee once. Approval. The wine was excellent. Everything in this house was excellent. Everything except the truth. That night, Marcus's voicemail was a single sentence.
Call me, now.
I waited until Leon was in the shower. Then I locked myself in the guest bathroom and dialed.
You went dark for 9 hours. Explain.
He gave me a new necklace. I had to remove the transmitter.
Did he suspect?
He knows everything I wanted to say. He's known from day one. We're not running this operation. He is.
That's an order, Vera. Not a discussion.
The line went dead. I stood in the bathroom for a long time. Then I walked to Leon's study. The door was unlocked. It was always unlocked. Leon didn't lock doors. He didn't need to. No one in this house would enter without permission. Except me. I went to the bookshelf where I'd hidden the spare transmator 3 weeks ago. It was still there, tucked behind a first edition of The Great Gapling. Then I saw the safe. New. Larger than the one he'd opened on our engagement night, built into the wall behind his desk where a painting used to hang. The painting was gone now. I walked toward it. The keypad was digital. 4 digits. I typed my fake birthday. The one on my fabricated identity documents. The safe clicked open. Inside were files. Thick Manily Borgids with FBI letter tap. My full personnel record. Academy evaluations, fitness reports, psychological profiles. And photographs. My mother. My childhood home in Virginia. My high school yearbook photo, the real one, not the manufactured history in my cover file. A picture of me at 5 years old, missing a front tooth, grinning at the camera. I hadn't seen that photo in 20 years. I didn't know it still existed. At the bottom of the safe was a single sheet of paper. Leon's handwriting. Vera Castellano, born Margaret Ellen Dwyer. Mother Demised, 2004. Recruited FBI Academy 2016. Specialization, deep cover operations. Handler, Marcus Webb. Asset value, incalculable. I put everything back. Closed the safe. Stood in the dark study with my heart beating so loud, I was sure the whole house could hear it. He'd known before I arrived. Before I opened my mouth. Before I existed. I wasn't his fiancé. I wasn't his opponent. I was his collection. I called Marcus from the guest bathroom again. The water ran in the sink. White noise. A habit I couldn't break, even though no one was listening anymore. He has everything.
My real name.
My mother's death date. A photo of me at 5 years old. Everything. Silence on the line. Marcus.
I heard you.
His voice was calm. Too calm.
Then use it.
Use it how?
He knows who you are, and he still put a ring on your finger. He still kissed you in front of his entire family. He still keeps you in his house. That's not a threat, Vera.
My grip tightened on the phone.
That's leverage. He's emotionally invested. That makes him vulnerable. Let him think he's win. Let him think you're conquered.
Marcus's tone was clinical, instructional. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The sapphire glittered at my throat. My engagement ring caught the vanity lights.
Vera,
Marcus's voice sharpened.
do you understand your objective?
Yes.
Then stop calling me with problems. Call me with evidence.
The line went dead. I set the phone down on the marble counter. The water kept running. I watched it spiral down the drain. Your vulnerability is a weapon. Let him think you're conquered. The rest is noise. I turned off the faucet. The silence rushed in. My reflection stared back at me. The same face I'd seen in the two-way mirror 3 months ago. The same face I'd seen in Leon's safe, 5 years old and missing a tooth. I didn't recognize any of them anymore. I wasn't FBI. I wasn't Leon's fiancée. I wasn't Margaret Ellen Dwyer. I wasn't Vera Castellino. I was a woman who had been told by everyone who was supposed to protect her that her only value was what she could fake. I dried my hands, hung the towel back on the bar, straightened my dress. Then I walked out of the bathroom. Something had shifted. Not broken, not shattered, just settled, like a bone popping back into socket after being dislocated for years.
I found Silas in the garage the next afternoon. He was washing Leon's black Bentley by hand. No one asked the head of security to wash cars. Silas did it anyway. He said it cleared his mind. He'd been a ranger before this, 2 tours. He moved like someone who'd learned that stillness was the difference between life and death.
You don't strike me as someone who washes cars.
I'm full of surprises.
I picked up a sponge and started on the hood. He watched me for a long moment. Then he went back to his side. We worked in silence for 10 minutes. The garage smelled like soap and gasoline and something green, the pine air freshener Silas hung from every rearview mirror.
How long have you worked for Leon?
7 years.
That's a long time.
He saved my life.
Silas didn't look up.
Not everyone who works for him is here for money.
I thought about the files in Leon's safe, the exhaustive detail, the childhood photos. He hadn't collected all that himself. Someone had gathered it, someone with skills.
Was it you? The investigation. My mother. My academy records. Was that you?
Simus stopped washing. He set down his sponge, dried his hands on a rag. Then he looked at me.
Every person who comes within 10 feet of Leon gets investigated. You were the only one who came back blank.
So you dug deeper.
I did my job. Your file was the thickest I've ever compiled. FBI did good work burying you, but no one's invisible.
Why didn't you tell him to walk away? Simus was quiet for a long time. Then he said,
Because I recognized something in your file.
What?
Someone else whose life got burnt down by the kind of men Leon does business with. My sister. 4 years ago. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time, witness to something she shouldn't have seen.
I didn't speak.
Leon's associates made her disappear. Not her body, her memory.
His voice didn't waver.
Brain injury. They made it look like a car accident.
Why do you still work for him?
Because proximity is the only way to find out which one gave the order.
He met my eyes.
And because I think you and I want the same thing.
I set down my sponge.
What
What do you think I want?
To burn it all down.
He said it simply.
From the inside.
Leon has files, everything, if I can get them out.
I can help you move them.
Simus picked up the hose.
But I want something in return.
Name it.
When it's done, I want the name. The man who took my sister's life while her heart kept beating.
Water cascaded over the Bentley's hood. Deal.